Tonight, we're not walking through dirty medieval streets or standing next to plague pits. Tonight, we're stepping into something quieter but just as dangerous. A table, a board, 32 pieces, two people thinking hard. We're talking about chess. Today, you might see chess as a smart game, maybe a little fancy. People play it in schools, parks, or online. But back in the Middle Ages, the church didn't think chess was just a harmless game. In fact, in the year 1329, the church in Paris officially said, "No more chess for priests." Yes, they banned it. Why? Because they believed chess was sinful. Let's imagine the scene. You're in a quiet monastery, a stone building where monks live and pray. It's dark and cold. Candles give off a soft light. Two monks are sitting at a wooden table, whispering, focused. Their hands slowly move carved wooden pieces across a board. The room is silent only, the fire crackles. Then the head monk walks in. He sees the board, and he is not happy. He doesn't see smart thinking or peaceful fun. He sees pride. He sees gambling. He sees a waste of time. He sees temptation. He sees the devil. To the church, chess was not a holy activity. It wasn't helping monks get closer to God. It wasn't helping people live good lives. It was making them too proud, too competitive, too focused on winning. That's not what monks were supposed to care about. So in 1329, the church leaders made a rule: no playing chess if you're a priest or a monk. The official reason? Chess made people lazy. It made them sin. And worst of all, it made them forget God. But here's the strange part. Chess didn't start out as a bad thing. It came from faraway India, many hundreds of years before. There, it was called chaturanga, and it was a simple war game. Later, it spread to Persia, then into the Muslim world, and finally into Europe. It changed a lot along the way. The pieces got new names, the rules changed, but people loved it. Nobles played it, kings played it, even monks played it secretly. And that was the problem. It became too popular, too serious, too human. Chess wasn't about heaven or holiness. It was about strategy, about power. It felt too much like the real world, and maybe that's why the church feared it. But did the ban work? Not really. People kept playing. They played in secret. They played at court. They played behind closed doors. Chess didn't die, it grew stronger. This is just the start of the story. In the next chapters, we'll follow chess through time. We'll look at why it scared people, how it changed, and how it went from being a devil's game to a symbol of intelligence and power. So stay close. The pieces are on the board. Let's begin the game. Let's be honest, chess doesn't look very scary. It's just a board with black and white squares, a few carved pieces shaped like kings, queens, and horses. Two people sit quietly, barely speaking. No one's yelling. No one's fighting. So why did the church in the Middle Ages act like this game was dangerous? To answer that, we need to understand how the church thought back then. In medieval Europe, the church wasn't just where people prayed. It was the most powerful institution in the land. It controlled what people believed, how they behaved, and even what they were allowed to think about. It made rules for kings and peasants alike, and anything that challenged the church's control, that was a problem. Chess was one of those problems. At first, chess seemed fine. It came to Europe through the Muslim world, most likely around the 9th or 10th century. People were curious about it. It was a game of thinking, of moving pieces like an army. Knights, kings, queens, and bishops. It felt familiar. It felt like the real world, and that was exactly the issue. The church believed life should be focused on God, prayer, and spiritual matters. Life was hard, yes, but it was meant to prepare you for heaven, not for fun. Too much entertainment was seen as sinful, especially games that encouraged competition, gambling, or pride. And chess? It had all three. Think about it. Competition. One person wins, one person loses. It's not about sharing or being humble. It's about beating your opponent. Gambling. Some people bet money or favors on chess games. That was strictly forbidden. Pride. If you won, you felt proud. If you lost, you felt angry. Both emotions were seen as dangerous to your soul. The church worried that chess was a gateway to sin. Also, chess had strange roots. It came from non-Christian cultures, first India, then Persia, then the Islamic world. Anything that came from outside the Christian world was treated with suspicion. Even if the game changed over time, its origins made it seem foreign, even pagan. But it wasn't just about religion. Some church leaders saw that people were spending hours playing chess. Monks were supposed to pray, copy books, serve the poor, but some of them were secretly playing games. It looked like wasting time. And in the church's eyes, idleness, doing nothing useful, was a path to sin. So in 1329, the church in Paris said, "Enough." They banned chess for the clergy, that means priests, monks, and anyone working for the church. They called the game vain and dangerous. That means it was foolish, prideful, and harmful to the soul. But chess didn't disappear. In fact, some kings and nobles ignored the ban completely. They loved the game too much. It was a way to relax, to practice strategy, and to show off their intelligence. Still, for many in the church, chess was now marked with a warning sign. This game might look innocent, but it pulls you away from God. In the next chapter, we'll visit the monasteries, where some monks tried to follow the rules, and others found clever ways to break them. Behind quiet walls, the game lived on. And not everyone played fair. Imagine a quiet stone building, far from the noisy town's cold walls, wooden benches, soft candlelight. This is a monastery, a place where monks live, work, and pray. Their lives are simple. They rise before the sun, pray several times a day, copy holy books, help the poor, and eat small meals in silence. But not all silence is holy. If you listen closely, in the corner of the scriptorium room where monks copy books, you might hear something strange. A soft clack, a whisper, then another clack. Two monks, heads close together, sit over a small wooden board. On it, black and white squares, carved pieces shaped like kings, horses, and towers. They are playing chess. Even after the church banned chess in 1329 for all clergy, including monks, it didn't just vanish. Many monks still loved the game. They believed it helped keep their minds sharp. It was quiet, thoughtful, and didn't require singing or dancing or shouting. Surely it wasn't as bad as gambling or drinking. Some even argued it was educational. They said chess helped them practice logic, strategy, and self-control. Isn't that what good monks should learn? And in some monasteries, their leaders quietly agreed. But not everyone felt that way. Some abbots, monk leaders, strictly followed the church's rule. If you were caught playing chess, you could be punished, lose your dinner, be forced to do extra prayers, or even be removed from your duties. The rules were clear. Chess was a distraction, and distractions could lead to sin. Still, many monks found creative ways to keep playing. Some played at night, by candlelight, when others were asleep. Some carved chessboards into the wooden tables where they worked, so it looked like they were reading or writing when really they were in the middle of a match. There are even records of chessboards found scratched into the backs of prayer books and under chapel benches. That's right, holy books with secret game boards. It was like hiding video games inside your math textbook. Of course, some monks genuinely believed chess could be a tool for teaching. They saw the game as a symbol of life. Each piece had a role. The king represented power. The bishop represented the church. The pawn was the common man. Some monks even gave sermons about how life is like a game of chess. You have to plan carefully, make sacrifices, and protect what matters most. But the church didn't like this idea. To them, comparing holy life to a board game seemed disrespectful. In some regions, bishops inspected monasteries and took away chess sets. Others just reminded the monks, "You are not here to play games. You are here to serve God." Still, the love for chess didn't die. Like water finding cracks in stone, it flowed quietly through the walls of the church, hidden but alive. In the next chapter, we'll step out of the monastery and into the royal courts, where kings and queens played chess out in the open and didn't care one bit what the church had to say. Outside the quiet walls of monasteries, the world of royalty looked very different. There were no strict prayer hours, no silent meals, no rules against fun. In the castles of medieval Europe, there was music, banquets, hunting, and yeshes, lots of it. And unlike the church, the kings and queens loved the game. To the nobles, chess wasn't dangerous, it was fashionable. It was a game of intelligence, strategy, and power, the very things that nobles were supposed to master. After all, what better way to show you're clever enough to rule a kingdom than by winning a battle of minds on a board? Let's picture a royal court. A grand hall filled with bright banners, golden candle holders, and the smell of roasted meat. Nobles in fine robes chat and laugh. In one corner, a chessboard sits on a carved table. Two lords lean over it, studying the pieces. A crowd watches in silence. A single move could change the game and, maybe, the reputation of the player. This wasn't just a hobby. It was status. If you were good at chess, it meant you had the mind of a leader. Kings played to show they were wise. Queens played to show they were sharp. Princes played to prepare for war. Chess became more than just a game. It became a symbol of royal skill. Even Queen Elizabeth I, centuries later, was known to play chess. But long before her, medieval rulers were already using the game as part of their identity. King Alfonso X of Castile, Spain, is a great example. In the 1200, he didn't just play chess, wrote about it. He ordered books to be made that explained the rules and strategies. These books had beautiful drawings showing how the pieces moved and how to win. One of them, the Libro de los Juegos, Book of Games, still survives today. It shows that while the church was warning people to stay away from chess, kings were celebrating it. And here's the twist. While bishops banned the game, many of them secretly admired the kings who played it. That made it hard to enforce the rules. How could you tell a monk not to play chess when the king just sent you a beautiful chessboard as a gift? So, in royal courts, the church's warnings were often ignored. The rich could afford fancy chess sets made of ivory, silver, or gold. Some were shaped like animals or warriors. Playing chess in public showed you had both money and brains. It was a kind of performance, especially during parties or diplomatic meetings. Even foreign ambassadors sometimes brought chess sets as gifts to kings. It wasn't just polite, it was political. The pieces of the game even reflected the royal world. The king and queen were obvious, but the bishop, a church leader, and the knight, a warrior, were there too. It was a perfect little kingdom on a board, and everyone had to play their role. In the next chapter, we'll explore those pieces more closely because each one tells us something about medieval life, class, and the way people saw their world. The chessboard, you'll see, wasn't just a game. It was society in miniature. Look down at a chessboard. What do you see? Black and white squares, two armies, pieces waiting to move. But in the Middle Ages, this board was more than a game. It was a tiny version of the real world. Every piece had a purpose, a role, and a social rank. To medieval players, it was like watching a miniature kingdom in motion. Let's break it down. The king, he's slow. He only moves one square at a time. He's not a strong attacker, but if he falls, the game is over. In medieval life, this made perfect sense. Kings were the center of power, but also vulnerable. If a king died in battle, it could throw an entire country into chaos. So, in chess, just like in real life, you had to protect the king at all costs. The queen. Today, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. She can move in any direction as far as she wants. But here's a fun fact. That wasn't always true. In early medieval chess, the queen was weak. She could only move one square at a time diagonally. She was more like a royal helper than a warrior. So, what changed? Historians think the queen's power grew around the 1400, especially in Europe, where strong queens like Isabella of Castile became famous. Some people believe chess changed to reflect the power of real-life queens. Suddenly, the queen wasn't just sitting beside the king, she was charging across the board, shaping the entire game. The bishop. In chess, the bishop moves diagonally. In medieval society, bishops were powerful church leaders. They advised kings, owned land, and had a huge say in politics. The church didn't love seeing their holy role turned into a game piece, especially one that could be captured. But bishops were too important to leave off the board. So they stayed even if it was awkward when someone shouted, "I just killed your bishop." The knight. The knight jumps in an L shape and can hop over other pieces. This movement is tricky, just like real knights were unpredictable on the battlefield. Knights were the fighters of medieval society, noble, brave, and often dangerous. In chess, knights can reach places other pieces can't. That made them a symbol of clever tactics and bold attacks. If you used your knights well, you were seen as a skilled player and maybe a skilled warrior too. The rook, or castle. The rook moves in straight lines up, down, or sideways. Its shape looks like a castle tower, and that's on purpose. In real life, castles were the heart of medieval defense. They were strong, steady, and hard to defeat. So rooks in chess represent powerful protection. They defend your king, but they also attack when the moment is right. The pawn, the smallest piece. It only moves forward one square at a time. It seems weak. But here's the twist. If a pawn reaches the other side of the board, it can become any other piece except the king. That means the poorest, lowest piece in the game can become the strongest. This was a powerful idea in the Middle Ages, when peasants almost never rose in status. But chess offered hope. Even a pawn could become a queen. The game reminded players of the world around them, kings and queens at the top, common people at the bottom, but all connected, all important, and all needing each other. By now, we've seen how chess looked like a tiny kingdom, a world of kings, queens, knights, and peasants, a perfect mirror of medieval society. But that mirror also showed something the church didn't like. Sin. To church leaders in the 1300, chess wasn't just a distraction. It was a tool the devil could use to tempt people. And the problem wasn't just the game itself, it was what the game represented. Let's talk about the big three: pride, gambling, and violence. 1. Pride. In the eyes of the church, pride was one of the deadliest sins. People were supposed to be humble, especially priests and monks. But chess made people competitive. You wanted to win. You wanted to feel smart. You wanted to say, "I beat you." That didn't sit well with religious leaders. They believed that kind of thinking led you away from God. Winning made people boast. Losing made them angry. Some players even refused to speak after losing a match. Pride turned the peaceful halls of monasteries into quiet battlefields. 2. Gambling. It didn't take long for chess games to involve money, favors, or status. Imagine this. Two nobles play. The loser agrees to give up a prized falcon, or a knight bets his sword, or a monk promises to do someone's chores for a week if he loses. The church had strict rules against gambling. It was seen as reckless and selfish. You were supposed to use your wealth to help the poor, not to bet it away over a game. Some players even lost land, jewelry, or political favors over a match. When chess stopped being friendly and started becoming risky, the church saw it as a serious threat. 3. Violence. Yes, even this. While chess wasn't a physical fight, it still created conflict. People argued. They threw pieces. They flipped the board. There are written reports from the time of players getting into real fights after losing. In some cases, it got worse. A match gone bad could end in a duel, swords drawn over a wooden king. And here's the thing. This wasn't happening in secret corners. It was happening in royal courts, in town squares, and in monasteries. To church leaders, chess was starting to look more and more like a gateway to serious sin. It made people forget their prayers. It made monks ignore their duties. And it made everyone poor and rich alike chase worldly victory instead of spiritual peace. And so, the 1329 ban in Paris made it official. Clergy were not allowed to play chess. But did that stop people? No. In fact, the ban almost made it more tempting. Like a locked door, everyone wanted to peek behind. Some bishops tried to rewrite the rules, making approved versions of chess with Christian lessons. Others tried to replace chess with holy board games that focused on saints and Bible stories. But none of them caught on. Why? Because chess was too good, too smart, too interesting, too real. It was a game where you could practice strategy, learn patience, and maybe even feel powerful in a world where most people felt powerless. By now, you know the church wasn't thrilled about chess. In 1329, it said loud and clear, "No chess for clergy." Priests and monks were told to avoid the game, to treat it as a temptation, a path toward pride, laziness, and sin. But not everyone agreed. In fact, as soon as the ban was made, a group of people started defending chess not just behind closed doors, but openly. Let's meet them. The noble defenders. First came the nobles. Kings, queens, knights, and lords didn't just enjoy chess, they saw it as part of their identity. They said chess wasn't a sinful game, it was a training ground. Think about it. Chess is about strategy, planning ahead, protecting your people, making sacrifices. Isn't that what good rulers and generals need to do? Many nobles believed that chess helped them become better leaders. It taught patience. It helped them stay calm under pressure. Some even believed it made them wiser in real war. So when the church said, "This game is dangerous," nobles replied, "This game makes us better rulers." The scholar defenders. Next came the scholars, thinkers, writers, and early professors. They didn't see chess as a sinful waste of time. They saw it as a mental exercise. In the 1200 and 1300, universities were growing across Europe. Ideas were being shared more than ever. And for many of these scholars, chess became a symbol of logic and order. Some even wrote books explaining how each piece on the board represented a part of society. The king ruled, the knight protected, the pawn worked hard and hoped to rise. To them, chess wasn't a problem, it was a lesson in how life worked. One famous scholar, Jacobus de Caecilius, wrote a book called The Book of the Morals of Men and the Duties of Noble Saul based on chess. It explained how every person, just like every chess piece, had a role to play. His book became so popular it was translated into many languages, including English. Jacobus didn't say, "Stop playing chess." He said, "Use chess to understand how to live a good life." The quiet supporters in the church. Even inside the church, not everyone agreed with the ban. Some bishops and monks quietly supported chess. They didn't write books about it, but they allowed it in their monasteries. They believed that as long as people played without gambling, without pride, and in moderation, the game wasn't sinful at all. In their view, the danger wasn't chess, it was how people played it. If you played with humility and respect, it was no worse than gardening or singing. In fact, it might even be good for your soul. It encouraged focus, balance, and peace. But these voices weren't always loud. They had to be careful. The church was powerful. Going against its rules could lead to punishment or worse, being called a heretic. Still, the defenders of chess kept pushing back, and as more people played, the bans became harder to enforce. Let's take a closer look at the chessboard around the 1300. The pieces are familiar: the king, the knight, the rook or castle, the pawn, and the queen. But here's a surprise. The queen wasn't always the most powerful piece on the board. In early versions of chess, especially in medieval Europe, the queen was one of the weakest. She could only move one square at a time, and only diagonally, slow, limited. More of a helper than a warrior. So how did the queen go from quiet side character to the deadliest piece in the game? Let's find out. The old queen, weak and careful. Chess came to Europe from the Islamic world, where the piece now called the queen was originally called the vizier, a royal advisor. In that version, the vizier was smart but not strong. His role was to give advice to lead the charge. When the game spread into Europe, people replaced the vizier with a queen, since European kingdoms had queens beside kings, but they kept her movement weak. After all, women in medieval Europe had very little power at least in the eyes of most men. So for hundreds of years, the queen in chess moved slowly and carefully, just like most people expected real women to behave. But history was about to change, and so was the game. Real queens, real power. By the late 1400, a new kind of queen had started to appear in Europe. These weren't just royal wives, they were rulers, warriors, and political leaders in their own right. One of the most powerful examples was Isabella I of Castile, queen of what is now part of Spain. She ruled side by side with her husband Ferdinand and played a huge role in uniting Spain. She helped fund Christopher Columbus's journey, strengthened her armies, and made bold political moves. People noticed. Suddenly, the idea of a queen being just a helper didn't seem right anymore. Chess began to reflect the changing times. The new queen, fast and fierce. Somewhere around the late 1400, a major rule change swept across Europe. The queen could now move in any direction, forward, backward, sideways, diagonally, and as far as she wanted. She went from one of the slowest pieces to the strongest on the board. This change made the game faster, more exciting, and according to some historians, more modern. People began calling this new version of chess Queen's Chess, or Mad Queen Chess, because of how powerful she was. And suddenly, the queen became the star of the board. The game had changed, not just in rules, but in meaning. The new queen wasn't just about power. She represented a world where women could be leaders, fighters, and game changers. And even though many people still didn't believe in women ruling, the chessboard told a different story. The church's response? Well, the church never made a new official ban just for the powerful queen, but many conservative voices didn't like the change. They thought the game was becoming too wild, too fast, and too proud. But by then, it was too late. People loved the new queen. The new rules made chess more exciting. The game spread faster. And in a time of new ideas and new rulers, chess became more than just a game. It became a symbol of changing power. We've talked about chess as a game, a battle of minds, a symbol of kings, queens, and society. But in the Middle Ages, some people believed chess was more than all that. They believed chess had mystical power. That's right, some thought this game could reveal secrets of the universe, teach hidden wisdom, and even predict the future. Let's step into the world of magic, symbols, and strange beliefs that grew around chess. Chess as a mirror of the universe. During the medieval period, Europe was full of big questions. What is life's purpose? What happens after death? Why do good people suffer? Books couldn't always answer these things, especially for people who didn't know how to read. So people looked for answers in symbols, in stars, in numbers, in dreams, and sometimes in games. To some scholars and mystics, chess wasn't just a game, it was a model of the universe. The board had 64 squares, which seemed like an important number to some. It could be split, studied, and matched with ideas about nature, the heavens, or the human body. Some believed each chess piece represented more than a soldier or noble. The king was the soul, the queen was reason, the knight was action, the bishop was faith, the rook was strength. The pawn was the body or the everyday person. Playing chess then became a way to understand yourself or even God. Did some people use chess for magic? It's hard to know for sure, but there are a few odd clues. Some old manuscripts suggest that certain mystics, people who studied secret knowledge, used chess to meditate or practice mental focus. Others believed chess could be used like astrology. The game's events reflected real-world struggles between good and evil. There are also stories half history, half legend of chess being used for divination, a way to predict the future. The idea was that how a game played out could reveal the outcome of a battle, a marriage, or a major decision. It sounds strange today, but remember, this was a world where people believed in omens, dream signs, and cosmic balance. Why wouldn't they think a serious game of chess might carry meaning from beyond? The secret language of chess. As the game spread, so did its hidden language. Writers and poets began using chess in their stories. Knights and lovers played it in tales of romance and honor. In some stories, winning a chess game was a symbol of winning someone's heart. Losing one meant losing your honor. Even in politics, chess became a symbol. A powerful noble might send a chess set as a gift, not just as a friendly gesture, but as a coded message. I see you as an equal. Or, let's play carefully. We're in a dangerous game. It was a quiet way to talk about strategy, alliance, and power without saying anything out loud. Chess and the fear of the unknown. Of course, not everyone liked these mystical ideas. The church, which was already suspicious of chess, really didn't like it being used for magic or prediction. That sounded a little too close to sorcery, which could get you punished or worse. Some clergy even warned that chess, like astrology or alchemy, could lead people away from faith and into the dark. But the truth is, most people didn't see chess as dark or evil. They saw it as deep. A game of symbols, a game of thought, a game that connected the mind to something bigger. In the Middle Ages, women were often expected to stay quiet, stay soft, and stay out of power. But some didn't. Some women, especially queens, refused to sit on the sidelines. They ruled, they led armies, they made laws, and yes, they played chess. For powerful women, chess wasn't just a game. It was a statement, a quiet way to show intelligence, strategy, and control, the same traits used to rule a kingdom. Let's meet a few of the queens who turned the chessboard into a symbol of female power. Eleanor of Aquitaine, the chess-playing duchess. One of the most famous women of the 12th century, Eleanor of Aquitaine was more than just a queen. She was bold, smart, and politically sharp. She ruled both France and England at different times. She joined the Crusades. She led rebellions. She managed massive lands. And she was known to play chess. In fact, some stories say she challenged knights and nobles to games not for fun, but to test their minds. If they couldn't beat her at chess, how could they lead in war? Historians can't say for sure if those stories are 100% true, but one thing is clear. Eleanor was a woman who played her own game, both in politics and in life. Isabella I of Castile, the queen who changed the game. We've met her before. Isabella of Castiglione, of the most powerful monarchs in Spanish history. She ruled beside her husband, Ferdinand, and helped unite Spain. She made huge decisions like funding Columbus's journey to the Americas. She was not just a queen by title, she was a ruler in her own right. By the late 1400, around the time of her reign, the rules of chess were changing. The queen on the board, once a weak piece, became the strongest. Historians believe this wasn't a coincidence. People saw how powerful women like Isabella could be, and the chessboard reflected it. The new, faster game with the queen charging across the board matched the way politics were changing. The rise of real queens helped shape the rise of the chess queen, the symbol of the queen. In art, literature, and court life, women started to be shown playing chess more often, not as a joke, not as decoration, but as equals. There are paintings and tapestries from the Middle Ages showing noble women deep in thought over a chessboard, dressed in fine gowns, holding their pieces carefully. Sometimes they played against men, sometimes against other women. Sometimes the game was a metaphor, playing chess as a way to talk about love, marriage, or even war. It became a kind of coded language. A queen who played chess wasn't just being polite. She was showing that she had a mind for strategy, that she could think ahead, that she could make hard decisions. And if she could win on the board, well, maybe she could win anywhere. The church's view? still complicated. As always, the church had mixed feelings. On one hand, women were supposed to be humble and obedient, not bold, not proud, and definitely not playing games that taught them to outthink men. On the other hand, when queens ruled nations and the church needed their support, it couldn't exactly stop them from playing a little chess. So, many church leaders stayed quiet, even while powerful women made the game their own. For hundreds of years, chess was a game for the powerful played in castles, palaces, and monasteries. It was a symbol of education, wealth, and royal thinking. But that started to change. By the late Middle Ages, something important was happening in Europe. Ordinary people were learning. Cities were growing. Trade was booming. More people could read, write, and earn money. This new middle-class merchants, craftsmen, scribes, and students wanted to enjoy the same things as the nobles. And that included chess, a game for the mind. Chess didn't need expensive tools. All you needed was a board, which could be drawn on cloth or wood, and pieces, which could be made from bone, clay, or even bread. It was a game that tested your thinking, not your money. That made it perfect for students, shopkeepers, and teachers who wanted to show they were smart, not just rich. Soon, chess sets were being sold in city markets. Books about chess were being copied and shared. People were playing in taverns, town squares, and at home with friends. What once was seen as a royal pastime was becoming a people's game. Chess as education. Some teachers used chess in the classroom to help students learn logic, planning, and concentration. Remember, this was before calculators, before Google, even before modern notebooks. Chess was one of the best ways to train a sharp mind. Parents began teaching it to their children. It was seen as a safe, smart game that encouraged focus, patience, and discipline. In many ways, chess became like reading, something every proper person should know how to do. Chess in the streets. As the middle class grew, so did the number of chess clubs, small gatherings where people met to play and compete. Players would sit on crates, benches, or barrels, slamming down their pieces and drawing crowds. Some bet money on the games, which the church still didn't love, but most played for pride and fun. People started using phrases like, "he's good at chess," to mean someone was clever in general. It became part of everyday conversation, part of normal life. And with more people playing, the game started to spread faster and faster across Europe. Different cities had different styles of play. Some people preferred slow, careful planning. Others liked bold attacks and risky moves. Chess was becoming a living tradition, shaped by the people who played it. What did the church think? Well, it still wasn't happy. The 1329 ban on clergy playing chess was still in effect in some places, but by now, it was hard to enforce. The game was everywhere. And when something becomes that common, it's hard to control. Some priests even played chess with members of their community, quietly, carefully, and always ready to hide the board if a strict bishop walked by. A game that united people. For the first time, peasants, monks, merchants, and nobles could sit at the same board and be equals. Your background didn't matter, only your mind. Chess didn't erase the problems of the Middle Ages, of course. Life was still hard. There were still wars, plagues, and poverty. But for a little while, across a small board of 64 squares, people found a space to think, compete, and connect. By the time the Renaissance arrived in Europe around the 14th to 17th centuries, the world was changing fast. People were questioning old ideas. Painters were creating lifelike art. Scientists were studying the stars. Writers were telling new stories about love, death, and human greatness. This was the age of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Galileo, a time when thinking became just as important as believing. And right there on many tables, in the homes of thinkers, artists, and nobles alike, sat the same familiar thing: a chessboard. The game becomes art. In the Renaissance, beauty mattered. Everything from furniture to fountains was made with detail and care, and chess sets were no exception. Simple wooden pieces were replaced with carved ivory knights, golden queens, and painted pawns. Chessboards were decorated with fine inlays, even made from marble or rare woods. Owning a beautiful chess set wasn't just fun, it was a status symbol. If a guest came to your home and saw a fine chessboard in your study, they'd know two things. You had taste, and you had a good mind. Thinkers and writers embraced the game. Many great minds of the Renaissance were chess players. They saw chess as more than a pastime. They believed it could train the mind, just like painting trained the eye or writing trained the soul. In fact, some scholars wrote entire books comparing chess to philosophy, politics, and life itself. The Italian poet Petrarch once called chess the image of war and peace. Other writers used chess as a way to explore romance, honor, or tragedy. A chess game became a way to tell a story to people, locked in a quiet struggle of brains, strategy, and emotion. Chess and humanism. One of the biggest ideas of the Renaissance was humanism, the belief that humans could grow, learn, and shape their own lives through knowledge and reason. Chess fit perfectly into that idea. It was a game where your background didn't matter, only your ability to think clearly and plan ahead. You didn't need to be born rich. You didn't need magic. You didn't need permission from a king. You just needed a board, some pieces, and a sharp mind. In a time when people were starting to believe that humans had power, not just fate or God, chess became a quiet celebration of that power. Did the church still ban it? Yes, but not really. By the Renaissance, the 1329 ban on chess for priests and monks was still on paper, but mostly ignored. Chess had become too popular, too respected, and too meaningful to be stopped. Even churchmen played it, some openly, some in secret. Some even used it in sermons, turning chess into a moral lesson. And because the Renaissance also brought new printing technology, books about chess showed to play, how to win, how to think like a master spread faster than ever before. The birth of chess masters. This was also the time when professional chess players started to appear. They weren't just playing for fun, they were famous for their skill. They taught the game, they wrote books, they traveled to cities and courts, challenging nobles and kings. Some were even paid to play or coach royal children. Chess was now part of high society, deep learning, and even education. It had fully moved from being a suspicious game to a symbol of intelligence and culture. As the Renaissance gave way to the Age of Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries, Europe was changing again. More people were reading, new cities were rising, ideas about science, reason, and personal freedom were spreading like wildfire. And through all of this, one quiet little game kept moving with the times. Chess. Once played by kings and monks behind stone walls, chess now found a new home in the bustling heart of everyday life in coffee houses. The rise of coffee and conversation. In cities like London, Paris, and Vienna, coffee houses became the meeting spots for thinkers, writers, rebels, and travelers. People came not just to drink coffee, but to talk, argue, read, and debate. And on many of these cafe tables, a chessboard. Chess became the perfect companion to conversation. It was slow, thoughtful, and didn't need noise. You could play a game and discuss politics, philosophy, or poetry all at once. The game was no longer just for nobles. It was for everyone: traders, teachers, artists, even students. In coffee houses, chess finally became what the church had once feared: a space for bold thinking, quiet rebellion, and personal pride. The first chess clubs. As cities grew, chess players started forming clubs, places to meet, play, and share strategies. Some were fancy and required a suit and invitation. Others were open to anyone who could play. People came to challenge each other, study moves, and record games, turning chess into a science. They brought notebooks, they created rankings, they debated openings and endings. They wanted to understand the game deeply. Some of these clubs still exist today. The first famous players. By the 1700s, certain players were becoming chess celebrities. One of the most famous was François-André Danican Philidor. a French composer who also became the strongest chess player in the world. He once played 3 games at the same time, blindfolded. He couldn't even see the boards. He just remembered where every piece was. People were stunned. Philidor also wrote a book in 1749 called Analysis of the Game of Chess, which became one of the most important chess books ever. In it, he introduced the idea that pawns are the soul of chess, not just weak pieces, but the foundation of strategy. This was a big shift. It meant that even the lowest piece had deep value, another quiet reminder of changing times. Chess and the Enlightenment mindset. The Enlightenment was all about reason, logic, and learning. It asked people to think for themselves and question authority. And what was chess if not a perfect practice of those values? You had to think logically. You had to plan ahead and learn from mistakes. You had to control your emotions and focus on truth over pride. The same tools you needed to win at chess were the tools Enlightenment thinkers believed you needed to live a good life. It's no wonder that chess became a favorite among philosophers, scientists, and revolutionaries. From banned to beloved. So, where was the church in all of this? By now, the old chess bands were mostly forgotten. Priests and bishops were even joining in. Some church schools used chess to teach discipline and thinking skills. The game had survived centuries of suspicion and come out stronger. What was once called the devil's game was now a gentleman's game. By the 1800, the world was moving faster than ever before. Steam engines powered trains across countries. Telegraph wires carried messages over oceans. Cities swelled with factories, workers, and new ideas. And in the middle of all this noise, chess quietly transformed once again. It was no longer just a game for thinkers in coffee houses. It became a sport, a profession, and for the first time in history, a game with world champions. Chess gets serious. In the 19th century, something changed. People stopped treating chess like just a clever way to pass time. It became something to master. People began studying openings and endgames, the way musicians study scales or athletes train drills. Chess books were printed in the thousands. Newspapers began publishing famous games, move by move. Players didn't just want to win, they wanted to leave their mark in chess history. And for that, they needed tournaments. The first international tournament. In 1851, London hosted the very first international chess tournament. Players came from different countries to test their skill and show who was truly the best. A German player named Adolf Anderssen won that event. He became the unofficial world's best, and his playing style was wild, bold, and romantic, full of daring sacrifices and brilliant attacks. But he wouldn't stay on top forever. The first world champion, Wilhelm Steinitz. In 1886, something historic happened. 2 players, Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort, faced off in a long series of games. The winner would earn a new title, World Chess Champion. Steinitz won. And with that, chess finally had what boxing, fencing, and other sports already had: a world title, a clear champion. Steinitz was different. His style was slow, careful, and strategic. He believed in science over style. He wrote long essays explaining why chess should be played logically, not emotionally. Some people mocked his slow, defensive moves, but in the end, Steinitz was right. He had started a new era of chess thinking. Chess around the world. With steamships, railroads, and telegraphs, chess could now travel the globe. Chess clubs opened in New York, Moscow, Buenos Aires, Bombay, and Tokyo. Players began reading about games from other countries. Tournaments grew bigger. The level of skill grew sharper. Chess was no longer just European, it was becoming global. People who had never met could still face each other on boards, in books, and through mail. In fact, a new version of the game appeared, correspondence chess, where players sent their moves by post, sometimes waiting weeks for a reply. Patience was part of the challenge. A game for all classes. Something else happened too. In the 1800s, chess became more than a hobby for scholars or kings. It became a game played in schools, pubs, clubs, and living rooms. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, if you had a board and the rules, you could play. Chess had officially become a universal language. Whether you were a worker in a London factory or a student in a Russian university, you could sit down, shake hands, and begin a quiet battle of minds. No violence, no wealth, no weapons, just thought. What about the church? By now, the church no longer had anything to say against chess. In fact, many bishops, priests, and theologians were fans of the game. Some even supported church-sponsored chess clubs. After all, it was quiet, thoughtful, and moral, exactly the kind of pastimes the church could support. The old fear of the devil's game was gone. Chess had been reborn again.